All right, you're welcome back to our second big story now. The crisis in the camp of the People's Democratic Party in Ondo State is far from over, as the authentic governorship candidate of the party is clouded in uncertainty.
Now, although a special panel set up by the Court of Appeal has granted the application of Tayo Jegede to appeal the judgment of Justice Okunabang that upheld the candidacy of Jimo Ibrahim, Jegede is racing against time ahead of the election. TVC News' Oshoma reports that Jegede's application was considered unmerit.
Supporters of the two factions of Nigeria's main opposition party, the PDP, anxiously await the outcome of the ruling of the special panel, whose aim is to determine the fate of these two major actors. Tayo Jegede is backed by the Markafi-led faction, and Jimo Ibrahim is endorsed by Alimodu Sheriff. Jegede had sought the leave of the court to appeal the recent judgment by Justice Okon Abang that led to his substitution, and his application was granted by the panel.
The Court of Appeal saw through the skin of deceit and cynical manipulation of judicial process that the other side is engaged in. We have been granted leave now to appeal, and we have filed our processes. We're hopeful that sometime the appeal will be heard.
This no doubt would allow for a speedy hearing of his case before the election. But this wasn't all the justices ruled on. The panel also dismissed their application of Alimodu Sheriff faction, challenging its jurisdiction to constitute a special panel. The leadership crisis at the national level of the People's Democratic Party has deepened the crisis in Ondo State. And with this ruling, it's not certain if members of the factions are ready to mend fences.
To obtain a copy of the ruling and exercise our constitutional right of appeal to the Supreme Court of Nigeria, because the weighty issues of law were raised and they have not been resolved to our satisfaction. So we are going to give the Apex Court the opportunity to have a look at the decision. The rulings are all interlocutory. As you must know, there are no appeals. They are just granted leave to appeal, and then the leave being granted are not founded on principles of law as we know them.
Supporters of the Markafi-led faction left the courtroom with high hopes, while for the Sheriff faction, it's not yet Uhuru. Oshoma Abu, TVC News, Abuja.
All right, we have a lawyer with us in the house, Liborous Oshoma, in the studio to discuss this. Liborous, it's good to have you this morning.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
You look like a prince.
Thank you. And a dual prince for that matter. Okay, and also Eni Akinshola, the Chief Press Secretary to Ondo State Governor, joins us from Akure, Ondo State. Good morning and thanks for joining us on the show.
Very much my pleasure. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be with you this morning.
Okay. All right, Liborous, let me start with you. You've been following this development from Ondo State all the while. Although the election is not here yet, but there are issues in court already. Very, very strong issues, as the case may be. Now, generally, how embarrassing or how interesting would you say this whole process has been so far on those states?
Very, very, very embarrassing. Very embarrassing. The election is a few weeks away, so the elections are here. Mm-hmm. One would have expected that by now, all the issues pertaining to, the candidates of any party would have been sorted out and resolved, and then, campaigns, and then give the Ondo people the opportunity to discuss issues as it affects governance in the state. But what we see, that's why we always talk about the attitudes of politicians and, their associates, their recruits, sometimes lawyers, to assist them in ensuring that, these manipulations and all of that are, if you remember the genesis of all of this, INEC did observe the Markafi-led faction primaries. And then, just like it happened in Edo State, we're almost going ahead to accept the nomination of the McAfee-led faction until Justice Okon-Abang's, ruling. And the McAfee-led faction candidate, Jegede, did approach Justice Okon's court to say, look, I am affected by this ruling as a candidate in this election, so permit me the opportunity to appeal, which was refused. And then they went to Court of Appeal. The first issue was, this panel had been compromised, and so we don't think that we will get justice before this panel. And that panel immediately, withdrew from the matter and said, okay, presiding judge reconstituted another panel to look into the matter. Another panel was reconstituted. And for me, the annoying part was a lawyer stands up in court to say that the reconstitution of this panel was in a hurry and they breached our fundamental rights. And I had expected that a lawyer who knows the implication of having issues resolved before election would even pray for urgency in matters such as this, so that the people will have opportunity, the court will have opportunity to look at all the issues and then and decide one way or the other, rather than asking the court to again disqualify itself
and start all over again.
Exactly, on frivolous grounds. And so for me, really, that's why I had consistently called on the NBA at this point. No matter how frivolous these issues are, there's need for NBA to begin to look at this type of applications and this type of conduct, because it's ridiculing, the entire system. The entire system. Look at them and melt out appropriate sanction. That's why in Senate societies, you hardly hear of this type of frivolous applications, because at the end of the day, it's going to cost the state so much. Assuming that INEC prepares for the elections and decides to go ahead only a few days to the election, and the court says no, that what you have done should be undone. Remember what happened during Tatiku's
let's
time
quickly just hold
with
on.
the presidential election.
Okay. We'll allow you land on that. Let's quickly bring in Eni Akinshola, Chief Press Secretary to Ondo State Governor. Okay,
let's
take
go
a
on the
quick
break
break.
First.
Yes, before
we'll go on
we
a break
bring him
first,
in.
and then we'll bring him in. Stay with us, sir.
Eni Akinshola, the Chief Press Secretary to Ondo State Governor, who is joining us from Akure, Ondo State. It's good to have you. Of course, our guest in the studio is Liborous Oshoma, a lawyer himself, who will be giving us all the legal angle to this whole legal mumbo jumbo, like some would describe it. Now, Mr. Chief, Press Secretary, Olusegun Mimiko has said there will be no election in Ondo State without a Jegede candidacy. Explain to us exactly what he means by this, and what's your take? And I'm talking about, the impression of the Ondo State government, as it were, on this latest judgment by the Justice Salawa, panel.
Thank you, Ngozi. It's my pleasure being with you once again. My good friend, the lawyer, has really touched on the issues deeply. The only thing I need to add is that, one, INEC had accepted the name of Ita Jegede. Not only that, they had pasted the name as statutorily provided for as a legal contestant on the platform of PDP in Ondo State. And our people had already gone to town knowing that their candidate's name will be on the ballot. But on the 27th of October, precisely, INEC came out to say that, based on an order of the Justice Okon-Abang Court, that it was removing the name of Ita Jegede and substituting with that of another person. Now, I am not a lawyer, but what I know is that as at 27th of October, the window of opportunity for substitution had closed. And these are facts that could be cross-checked. But let us go to the issue that you raised. What Dr. Mimiko said was that it is not imaginable that the candidate of the leading party, the ruling party in Ondo State, will not be allowed to contest for elections to hold. So it is not a threat. It is a statement of fact. A statement of fact that a candidate that has the support of more than almost 60% of the population of Ondo State. And what do I mean? A candidate that has a backing of 18 local government chairmen out of 18, a candidate that has the backing of 21 out of 26 House of Assembly members, a candidate that has the backing of the governor, a candidate that is popular, a candidate that comes from the most populous demography in the state. It will be a risk. It will be an unrealistic step to disenfranchise that candidate, to deregister him from that ballot. That was the point the governor has been making. And as a governor, he has the right to inform Nigerians of the truth, that we are taking a dangerous risk if we undermine the opinion of the majority.
All right,
you raised this far. My lawyer friends. Yep.
All right, Eddie, let me come in this way. We know that it's just about a week plus, or there are about 2 weeks roughly to the election. What's the impact of this legal issue generally to the ability or capacity of your candidate going into this election? Because we have, at the course of this crisis, the other political parties have been campaigning and have been winning grounds.
Now, I'll be frank and I'll be fair to you. If we have the name of Eitai Ojegede on the ballot a week to election, he would trounce the other candidates. And the facts are obvious. The Eitai is coming from the stock of a party, of a government that has overperformed in all ramifications. Now, I can just mention one or two things. In the area of infant and maternal mortality, a huge yardstick for development and growth in this part of the world, Ondo State has not only surpassed the MDGs, Ondo State has moved beyond the imagination of the projection of the current government. I understand about a week ago that the federal government said they were targeting a basic health center, one per ward in the country. Targeting, mark my word, a projection. But I will tell you that there is hardly any community in Ondo State that don't have a basic health center. There is hardly any community that don't have the imprimatur of government. From a state where we have 4 consultants, we now have 70 consultants in this place. From a state with just one dualized carriageway, we had several dualized carriageway. From a state where we had CD primary school, we have a government that had built close to 60 mega primary schools. So you imagine that the people would dump that government and vote for a government whose track record elsewhere, or parties whose track record elsewhere are nothing to write about. So the truth is, the people are ready to vote. The sad part, however, is that INEC, pandering, unfortunately, submitting, unfortunately, to the blackmail of some people, and maybe the Muslim of some people, removed the name of the legitimately nominated candidate of PDP and put the name of somebody who was not legitimately nominated, somebody who was nominated, quote unquote, in a night party in Ibadan, elsewhere outside Ondo State, somebody who did not have any of the statutory delegates of the party, as stated out in the party's constitution. And who are these delegates? Local government chairman, local government vice chairman, all elected members of House of Assembly, all elected members of National Assembly, the governor, the deputy, and indeed the party structure, and many others, and 3 hardcore members nominated under the supervision of INEC. They were all here at this dome that you see behind me in a peaceful, orderly, open program transmitted on national television for 3 hours. And they legitimately nominated Eitai Ojegede. Now compare this with the other person who we cannot say where his primaries was held, who were there, were they legitimate, were they legal, and you expect that elections will go and the people will keep quiet? So we are telling the whole world.
Yes, we do understand.
We should not take this
all
risk.
of the background and what has led, to this point. But he's mentioned INEC. INEC says it had to do the substitution based on Justice Abang's, ruling. What was INEC to do, really, in terms of obeying the last order, if I could put it that way? No, and really, what were the grounds on which, just hold on a second. Sorry, we'll come to you. What were the grounds on
because
which...
I need to...
We will let you land on that. Sorry. Please. Thank you. You know, what were the grounds on which Justice Abang actually ruled, you know, we're replacing Jagade with Juma Ibrahim?
You know, this issue of PDP had been before Justice Abang for a long time. This is not the first time. If you remember the McAfee faction also, and the Alimodu Sherif's faction, there was a judgment from, they were, at the time, they had two conflicting judgments. One recognizing Modu Sherif, the other one McAfee. The one recognizing Modu Sherif came from Justice Okonabang. The one recognizing Sherif, McAfee, came from Port Harcourt, one in Port Harcourt, one in Lagos, and another one at the Federal High Court in Abuja. And then we did query that one would have expected that all of these cases would have been consolidated by the Chief Judge of the Federal High Court, because all the issues are related, to ensure that the matter is dealt with once and for all. Also, there were arguments that the matter before Justice Okon Abang, that the counsel for PDP in that matter was, because the matter was, the claimant in that case was Modu Sherif.
Yes.
And that the counsel for PDP in the matter was also a counsel representing the Modu Sherif faction. And that so there was no way that the McAfee faction was going to get judgment in that matter. And then for this one, when the delegates, the Ondo State, then a fallout of that outcome at the national level, then you now had two factions at the state. And so when the state ESCO were constituted, the McAfee faction, the Modu Sherif faction, approached Justice Okon's Abang Court again, asking that they are the recognized, you know, an authentic PDP in Ondo State. It was on the basis of that ruling that, because also at that time, Eyitayo Jegede ordinarily couldn't have been a party in that matter. And because it was a matter between factions of the executive at the state level. And so when elections were now conducted, primaries were conducted, and candidates emerged, and ruling had been granted in that matter. So they approached the courts again for clarification on that ruling. And it was upon that that the Justice Okon Abang now instructed INEC to recognize the faction of Modu Sherif. And so that was when INEC now made a U-turn. For INEC, they had no option but that to obey a court judgment. But what I found out at that time also was the fact that you had given an order, and the order now extends to the candidate in an election. And you know that now there is no way that candidate will not be affected. Remember the case of Peter Obi.
I think let's go on a break first, and then we'll come back on this. Stay with us, we'll go on a break. All right, if you're just joining us, you're watching TVC Breakfast, and we are looking at developments from Ondo State in southwestern Nigeria. Let me bring you in, Eni Akinshola. You were itching to say something earlier on. Let me give you the opportunity before we go for the news update.
I was going to add that if INEC was going to add on the order of court, there were orders of court that came after Justice Abang, and I say this was a sense of responsibility. There was an order of court from at the instance of Eyitayo Jegede, asking that his name, that INEC by a proxy or by itself, should not tamper with the name of Eyitayo Jegede from the Akure High Court. And this is a court of coordinate jurisdiction, as lawyers would say. There was also an order of court at the instance of Bamidro Dada, a co-contestant with Jimo Ibrahim, who also said that Jimo's name should not be put on the ballot. And they all came at about the same time, if not later, than Justice Okon Abang's judgment. So I say this without trying to input anything about INEC. I know that there was some muslin on INEC, but these orders were specific about not tampering with the name of Eyitayo Jegede, who has been accepted and advertised as the candidate of the PDP. So if it's about order of court, we must know which precedes which. But beyond that, my friend, the lawyer, talked about something that we call absolute collusion. But these are facts that will be determined by the courts eventually. In a situation where the chambers that prepared the writ of summons in one case, now ending up representing the other.
Right. All right, thanks for staying with us on TVC Breakfast. We're discussing Ondo PDP and fallout of the issues there going into the election. And we have Liborous Oshoma, a lawyer, with us in the studio. And in Akure, we have the Chief Press Secretary to the Governor of the state, Eni Akinshola. Now, Eni, let me stay with you on this. I know I've interrupted you about 2 times. Let me give you the opportunity to give us your background before we go ahead now. Go ahead with the point you were making earlier on.
Thank you very much. I was saying that if it were to be about orders of court, we know which orders came first and last. But that is even beside the point. The point is that Ejita Ojege's name has been advertised, accepted by INEC, and that by 27th of October, when the said substitution was done, INEC had closed the window for such. But beyond that, we make bold to say that we do know that the forces behind these manipulations are way above INEC. And I say this with all sense of responsibility. There is a calculated attempt to knock off the most popular candidate from the ballot, and that's Ejita Ojegede, so that it will pave the way for a candidate of another party that I know will not work in Ondo State. Look, the history of Ondo State is clear. The much respected Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, somebody I respected well, supported a candidate in 2012 here in Ondo State. But our people said, why not hating Asiwaju? They said, look, we want to be the masters of our own destiny. We want to choose our own leaders. Now that you have powers outside the Southwest, people who have never contributed to development of the Southwest backing one candidate, and some people want to lord that candidate over us in Ondo State, I can assure you it's not going to be possible. Our people will resist it. I do know that people have the capacity to resist. Our people are aware. They are knowledgeable.
Eni, let me ask you this. Eni, let me ask you this. Without preempting what the court order is going to be at the end of the day, but if it turns out that Jimoh Ibrahim is upheld on the final note, what will be your disposition and the state government's disposition to the ruling in that instance?
Now, on this one, I will not be able to say this is what the state government will do. But what I can assure you is this, that injustice should not be allowed to be contemplated at all. Injustice gives room to a number of things. Once you kill the dreams of the majority of the people, you lay the foundation for what cannot be expected. I can tell you this, that the governor has been on edge all the last week, appealing to people to wait for justice to prevail. I'll tell you, yesterday, when those rulings came, and your reporters are in town, you can cross-check with them, Akure went agog because a window of opportunity was opened. They saw an opportunity that their candidate was going to come in. Across the state, people were celebrating, were jubilating. And if you kill the dreams of the people, then you must be ready to reap the whirlwind. And this is not a threat. This is the reality of our time. You cannot continue to pummel the people with injustice and expect them to sit down like goats, to sit down like sheep and continue to obey you. It can't work. It's the reality of the social dilemma. Once the people feel that justice is not served, once the people think that there is a deliberate effort to suppress their will, they find alternative means of expression. And I plead with Nigerians, let us plead with those in power, that it is not a crime to allow a candidate to at least contest. Let the candidate contest freely and fairly. You cannot say somebody who was not produced by a legitimate primary should contest. You know the people will react against that person. You know the people will vote against that person. So you want to create a platform for your candidate to win. It cannot be acceptable to sane minds. And on those people are sane minds. It cannot be acceptable to educated people. And on those people are educated. It cannot be acceptable to moral people. And those people are morally upright. And that is why I appeal. Our appeal has been since the beginning that our people should keep their cool, should not take the laws into their hands. And that is why at every turning point, once there is a window of opportunity, they celebrate.
All right, Mr. Akinshola, we'll come back to you, of course. Liborous, what are the implications of this? While we're waiting for Ladele to join us and let us know what the people are saying, what their tweets are saying, what are the implications of this? Let me read what Justice Alawa, said, especially concerning Koroye's, application, that it was absurd, blackmail, utmost mischief, abuse of court process aimed at annoying the appellant and obstruction of justice. Now, these are strong words.
Yeah. It's like telling the court, because I'm involved, don't handle this matter. Don't do justice in the matter at all. Don't even look at it. And that's why it's funny to me. It's because what we are saying is it's new. It's strange where you come, you say, this panel, there's allegations that they'll be biased. And the panel says, okay, even though these allegations are wide and lack merit, we will, withdraw. It's setting a bad precedent because anybody can come tomorrow and say, oh, you'll be biased. It is not every application that
we've seen this happen in other issues right now.
Panels will usually withdraw. But in this case, they decided, okay, let the presiding judge reconstitute another panel. And timeously, because time is of the essence in this matter, the PJ decided to do justice and say, okay, let another new panel look into it. And you are saying, no, why the hurry? That time is not of the essence in this matter. And so this PJ should disqualify this panel as if the panel is on trial. And so that's why, and then also that no matter the outcome of this, of the application, that a candidate, somebody who is a candidate in the election is saying, I will be affected. I have interest in this matter. So at the trial, at the court of first instance, the issues were entirely different. But the issues at stake now also affect my candidature. So permit me to also be joined in this matter so that also you can hear my side, the law of what the author represent.
So was it deliberate not to even join Itai Jagede in the first place?
That time, the issues that were before the court had nothing to do with this.
They were different.
With him. They were different. And so that's why, if you remember, in Anambra, there were similar issues. And the matter went as far as Supreme Court. INEC had even gone ahead to conduct election and swore Anduba in. And the court said, no, there was no vacancy in the first place. But all those money that had been wasted, nobody is held to account. Exactly. And also, if you remember, in Amechi's case, the party went ahead to substitute the candidate for the election. And the Supreme Court said, no, you cannot. The man had been nominated. And so, all the money that had been wasted, all of them, nobody is held to account.
Okay.
And so that's why that's why we need to be careful. The world is a global village now. That's why we need to be careful. That's why I think also the NBA should rise up to the occasion. And judges, most especially.
The judiciary,
like they say, when a judge sits on trial, the judge is on trial. The judges in this matter also should, because they know that you're handling this matter and the entire world is looking at you.
Okay, let's bring in Foladele to give us a perspective to this. Fola, good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Good to see you, Liborous, as usual.
Okay, let's go on a break before you continue. So stay with me on my wall there. And let's go on a break and then we'll come back to get the reaction on social media.
Okay, welcome back. And very quickly, Foladele is right there on the wall to find out exactly what the people are saying concerning this Ondo election brouhaha.
Okay, let's go to Mike's wall.
Yes.
So let's see what people are saying about this one. Okay, first one here from Adekunle Adite says, enough. Let's shift focus to Ondo State. Perhaps shift focus from US elections.
Exactly.
Since it's election season. Next one here from El Boogie, he says, on a lighter note, Jimo Ibrahim thinks he can win Ondo State gubernatorial elections. Haha. Deji May says, in the next government of Ondo State, we say no to government of imposition. Let the voice of the people be heard. Our votes must count at INEC Nigeria. Malam Femi Ikenna says, heard Ondo State APC gubernatorial rally was a flop. Good sign. Otumba says, and this was at Oleniju, they got in a conversation about this one, and he says to him, fam, the only chance PDP has in Ondo State is if Jegede wins at appeal court. He is the one people want. But Jimo? Question mark. LOL. And then Oleniju replied saying, no be by name, I beg. Party loyalists are party loyalists. And the last one here from Adegoroye says, the future of Ondo State should not be decided based on region and tribes, but integrity, capacity, and preparedness to serve. So I want to take this one to Eni over there in Akure. Eni, based on these criteria that Adegoroye mentioned, integrity, capacity, and preparedness to serve, who do you think deserves to be the governor of Ondo State, the next governor, of course?
You see, the truth is, Eta Jegede stands shoulder above other contestants. Now, the other guy whose name is being peddled on the platform of PDP, for instance, I know him. If you want to benefit from judicial manipulation, you cannot be said to be a man of integrity. If you had, as of June this year, announced that you were contesting on the platform of Accord Party, long after this case, this Konaban case had been filed, and you now claim you are benefiting from the judgment of Okonaban's court, you cannot be a man of integrity. You cannot be a man with capacity. You cannot be a man to be trusted with the destinies of over 4.5 million people. So the facts are clear. The other man said party loyalty. Yes, it would have been easy to talk about party loyalty, but the man whose name is on the ballot is not a member of the PDP in Ondo State. The facts are open. They are in open public. He said as of June 21st this year that he was going to run on the platform of the Accord Party. As of December, as at the last election, he worked against the interest of the party. And you are now saying party loyalty for the party to work for somebody who works against his interest, less than 7, as of June this year. So it's not about one. This man is not a member of a party. Everybody knows. Let me tell you what is happening in Ondo State, and it's a fact that you can verify. Everybody in Ondo State believes that the APC, using some of the structures, wants Jegede off the ballot so that it could be a smooth ride for his candidate, Mr. Akeredolu. It cannot work in Ondo State. These facts are open. You tell, even a primary school people will tell you that, Konishebi, they will tell you that it can't work here because they know those who are doing this manipulation. It's just sad that Jimo Ibrahim has lent himself to this manipulation. Okay. It's sad that Okonaban has lent himself to this manipulation.
All right, Mr. Akishola, thank you so much. Just hold on while we allow Foladele thank you so much. Yeah. Liborous, let's even look at the dynamics playing out here in terms of who, the question Fola just asked, who, Akinshola believes would likely carry the day. Do you think this election will be along party lines, or the people of Ondo State will actually be voting for individuals?
Nigerian elections are usually along, people vote for individuals, and then in some cases vote for parties, depending on the strength of such party and depending also on the candidates. But in this case, my issues would be, let's not allow the courts to determine for us who should govern. Let it be that the people are given the opportunity for them to determine who governs them. We've seen cases in Nigeria where at the end of the election, the court will come and say, look, there was no election, there ought not to have been an election, or the candidate that was voted for ought not to have been the candidate. Let it not be so. And that's why for me, I think, let all the preliminary issues be tabled before the court. Let the court take a timeless decision on the matter so that the people would have a clear head to go, to the polls. If you remember in 1983, this also played out in this same old Ondo State. Remember the Omobore War issues? And at the end of the day, the crisis in Ijero. So let's not begin to prepare a recipe for chaos. If you think that you are popular, allow the people's will to be determined at the polls. Okay. But otherwise, this democracy that we are calling nascent and that we are enjoying might just be walking, the democracy to the precipice, and it will not be too good for all of us.
All right, Liborous Oshoma, thank you very much for coming on the program this morning.
Always my pleasure.
All right. Eni Akinshola, thank you very much for joining us from Akure this morning. We wish you well.